that we do need to be competitive in what we can do. We probably can't compete with China on manufacturing ever. That's fine.
Yeah.
But for what we can do, our creativity, our music, our culture, our heritage, the tourism, the landscapes, our film industries, for example.
Hey there, everyone. I go by the name of Adrian Daniels. Welcome to the Sound of Accra podcast. So if this is your first time listening or watching, this is the show where we speak with top Ghanaian founders, entrepreneurs, and creatives worldwide with the aim of leaving you behind with meaningful takeaways that you can apply in your life, business, and career. Just some housekeeping, guys. For today's episode, you can head over to thesoundofaccra.com/Amma G. That's thesoundofaccra.com/Amma G for all of today's show notes, key links, wisdom, references from today's episode. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe, like, leave a comment below. Let us know what you think of today's conversation. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or where you get your podcasts, a 5-star review is very much appreciated. So I'm going to move on to today's guest. So I'm joined by Amma. Is it Amma Gyampo?
Yep.
I'm joined by Amma Gyampo, and she's the co-founder and CEO of ScaleUpAfrica. She's going to tell you all about it in just a moment. Amma, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Lovely to meet you. We had a friend that introduced you to me, so thank you very much. I know she doesn't probably want to be named, but thank you to that special person. So good to have you in the show. What have you been up to?
A lot, Ghana hustle. China, for me, it's all about connecting young people and women to resources, right? So
Beautiful.
It's constantly on calls, having meetings with donors and foundations to try and figure out how best to do that.
Yeah. I'm just trying to been figuring out how to, you're one of those rare guests that it's hard to put you in a box really in terms of what you do. Like, yeah, you've got ScaleUpAfrica, but then there's a lot of other moving parts that are based around you, 20 years experience in so many different verticals and ecosystems. It's quite hard to put you in a box. So tell us, who is Amma Gyampo and how do we describe you in 60 seconds or less?
Sure. So I'm a mum of 2, got 2 kids.
Beautiful.
Moved to Ghana about 11 years ago.
Okay, cool.
But always been coming back to Ghana since I was a kid. And, Ghana's always had a very big influence on me. My grandparents were entrepreneurs. I had that bug from a very young age.
Yeah.
But for me at the moment, this current chapter of my life is really about, like I said earlier, just really dealing with some of the advocacy around how do we plug the poverty gap. We have 12 million young people entering the job market every single year across the continent alone. Yeah. That's a huge problem to fix. And despite the multinationals that we see, all the big brands we know on the continent, it doesn't commensurate with jobs, right? So how do we really tackle that particular problem? So that's what keeps me up at night and keeps me busy.
Wow. Thanks for sharing. It's really interesting to hear that. And we're going to double tap on, kind of like bridging like the wealth gap and things like that, because I think it's a very important topic. I think it's partly why I'm excited to have you in the show, because it's not every guest I get to talk about these, real socio-economic issues that we need to solve in Africa. I'm glad you're part of the solution. But yeah, we will definitely dive into that. I think I did have one of my previous guests, Samuel Brooks, from remotely. I think he's on that mission to really close that gap in terms of providing jobs, not like to the diaspora, but like to like the everyday working Ghanaian and African, because I think they're expanding across Africa, not just Ghana, which is brilliant. So we'll kind of dive into that, shortly in a bit more time. So I want to go straight into one of the events you went to recently. So I think it was Valerie's event. What's her company again?
Wahu. Yeah, can I get a Wahu?
I didn't even know there's like
it's a whole thing.
Really, it's a whole thing. All right, cool. Just tell it for those that who aren't really aware of what Valerie does. I haven't met her. Yeah, I just heard so much about her. Just tell the audience kind of like what she does a little bit.
Valerie Labi is an amazing local entrepreneur. She's also returned from the UK many years ago, and she really gets her hands dirty. Like in terms of, she's been in the north, she's done sanitation work, a lot of advocacy. But at the moment, Wahu Mobility is all about mobility. Like, how do we get more people transferring from to clean energy, right? How do we get more of these riders around riding bicycles that are powered by solar? So she's designed this wonderful vehicle, and there are more designs coming up. But basically, they launched their EV zone right here in Accra last week.
Yeah.
An amazing launch. We just heard about the story, meeting local engineers that she's employed. Her team are fantastic. They're scientists, they're building, they're designing, they're using the latest technology to really try and crack the mobility problem to reduce traffic, obviously, to look at carbon credits as a way to generate revenue for the country. They're designing amazing bikes to change into to green fuel and green energy. And she's just really shaking up the space, and it's great to have a physical EV zone in Ghana. And it was just really super exciting to be part of that particular launch. Especially going back to maybe a year or two ago, when I first visited her at Impact Hub in Accra. A smaller space, but she had just started up. So it was really great to see the journey from that particular space to this massive space in the middle of Accra.
So she came from that small area to where she is now.
But Impact Hub is obviously a fantastic ecosystem as well to help startups do their thing,
Amazing. It's really, really incredible. And I think, there's probably a lot of synergy in terms of what you do and what she does as well. Probably someone I do need to get to eventually in terms of interviewing, maybe not this season, but I had Anthony from Shaq Express, in the other day or maybe the other week, and I think he kind of works together with her to an extent.
With the bikes,
with electric bikes,
they do delivery, right?
Delivery as
logistics
well.
company.
And then the season before, the last season, I had a chat with Alex from Menu Finder, and I think they're looking into maybe getting into the EV space soon. I think I bumped into him at an event last week.
Need design for your startup? Switch to workspaceglobal.com, the internet's simplest design service. Skip the agency and freelancer headaches. Our platform connects you instantly to vetted creatives to get your logos, websites, and marketing materials fast, all managed for you by our team, software, and AI, so you can focus on what you care about most, growing your business. Try us for free, workspaceglobal.com.
So I had a conversation with Anthony from Shaq Express. He came in over there, and he was talking about the bikes and working with Valerie, and I was quite inspired because I think he kind of wants to kind of get to maybe like 1,000 EV bikes by the end of the year, which is quite ambitious as well. And then bumping into Alex from Menu Finder Africa, I think he's kind of looking towards electric. So there's like a whole, I think all these industries that are impacted by electric bikes, there's like a whole kind of like transition where everyone's kind of moving away from carbon fuel emission, transportation to kind of electric powered, transportation, which is quite interesting. How do you see in terms of Africa? Like how far away do you think Africa is from getting to that place where it becomes more mainstream? Because, we haven't really got Tesla, zones and stuff like that.
Africa doesn't need Tesla. There's so many. I think the unique thing about Wahu Mobility is that they've really surveyed the marketplace. They've designed a bike that suits our roads and our terrain, and it's not really imported. Most of the components are local, but of course they import some. So there's a huge potential for local scientists, engineers, riders, young people who are doing all kinds of things, whether you have your own business and you want to have a bike or two to do your logistics, or if you have a fleet of vehicles. It makes a lot of sense in terms of, your move away from oil and gas, right? It just makes a lot of sense. The price of fuel is extremely expensive, and it's getting more expensive. It's dirty, it's not clean. We go to places like Nigeria, and people are switching to, solar powered options. So I think there's a bit of a wave going on, which is encouraging to see. We have a lot of sunshine, so it makes a lot of sense. So I'm sure that we'll see an acceleration of some of these activities.
The EV vehicles, they're not really solar powered, are they?
Solar powered batteries that
really?
you could plug into your home plug, and you charge, you can replace them, and you're good to go.
Okay, so they're actually solar powered. These ones
So the batteries are removable, and then you can plug them in.
Wow. Okay, that's
so literally, it's powered by solar. That's
amazing. So that's a better case for Africa, then, isn't it?
100%.
UK or the West.
Very unique to the current situation, and it works for a lot of young people. You see the riders around. I spot them every day. You see more and more people using them. So definitely, they're cool to ride. I've been on one. I've ridden around the zoo on a couple of the bikes, and
well, you were riding, or you're riding on the back of somebody?
No, I was actually riding.
Okay, cool.
I grew up riding bicycles.
Okay, cool.
So it's a cool. It's got the cool factor as well. So it's cool brand, cool CEO, cool team. And it's an African solution built for Africa. So
brilliant, cool.
It's encouraging.
Cool, and it kind of ties in with kind of your one of your focuses is sustainable development, isn't it, in Africa? I think it's a good segue to talk about ScaleUpAfrica now, and tell us a bit more about ScaleUpAfrica and what you guys do over there.
ScaleUpAfrica is basically an entrepreneurship support organization, but we are very much focused on drawing resources into the continent. So we have a lot of conversations and partnerships with corporations and their sort of CSR departments and sustainability departments, and of course donors, foundations, and the development finance institutions to figure out how to attract capital for entrepreneurial activities, right? How do we create new marketplaces? How do we support entrepreneurs that are doing amazing things? How do we also get away from the startup conversation? Because there's a lot of resources around startups, but not so much. We're not really doing well in terms of building medium-sized companies. They are the companies that we need to really focus on. And so a lot more of our attention is really looking at creating new markets and new innovations, and also getting more people up to the growth stage, which I think is really important.
And scale up, isn't it?
Scale up.
Because
so that is very much the vision. So it does what it says on the tin.
Yeah. Talk us through, I mean, we both know, but talk us, for the sake of the audience, difference between a startup and a scale up, because I think it's quite important to know.
Yeah, I mean, starting up is really the idea. You're trying to solve a problem. You're trying to get customers, your first paying customer. You're trying to prove the model and hopefully making revenue on a regular basis for that. So people are willing to pay for your service or product. Scaling up is a whole other ball game, especially in Africa. It's extremely difficult. Every market is different. But there are commonalities, right? Those companies that have grown to middle size or medium size have typically been around for a long time. They've really taken their time to get close to the customer or the problem itself that they're trying to solve. And they've really drilled down into doing that. And not necessarily with external funding. A lot of it has been like, they've solved a problem and it just works. The mobile phoning in Africa is its story on its own, right? Like 25 years ago, everyone was saying, Africa's too poor for mobile phones. It will never work in Africa. And then, we're looking at Kenya innovating with mobile money and all these kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
So it's really about creating new marketplaces and new innovations for the marketplace here. We jumped from landlines. We didn't really do landlines much. We went straight to mobile, and it's going to grow from there.
Amazing. It's just incredible, And are there any scale-ups in particular that you kind of admire in terms of like African-based or even Ghana-based?
I mean, there are a few of the brands that we all know, the Flutter Waves of this world. And, there's kinds of brands that everyone talks about. But we could do a lot better. I mean, there's a lot of incubation and acceleration activity, but it doesn't necessarily translate into that kind of medium tier scale up, growth phase that we really need to see for the job creation. Like I said, 12 million young people join the workforce every single year. So we have a lot to do to make sure we can create the jobs at that scale of medium to large scale businesses to absorb those young people.
It's a very interesting case you have here, because Africa's let's touch on Africa's labor force now. I think it's a good segue, Amma. So I think it's a very interesting case we have here, because Africa's the youngest continent in the world, and then you have so many people trying to get jobs. I mean, average person maybe 18, I think, age 18, and you have a lot of people who are unemployed and trying to get jobs, but who also, come from a cultural background where education is heavily pushed and there's not enough like work experience and skills upskilling done. It's such an interesting scenario here in terms of the labor force. Tell us maybe how Scale Up kind of Africa helping to kind of solve that problem in terms of like trying to help the labor force.
Yeah, I mean, we don't do so much on the labor side, but we do believe in creating value chains and marketplaces and ecosystems that would absorb young people. So that would automatically mean we'd have to do some level of skills development, that is practical skills development. So that's the approach that we take to it. It's not so, we're not heavy on the skills training, but when it comes to creating a marketplace or something new, we would look at obviously bringing in technical partners to make sure that the young people involved are trained adequately to deliver the service or the product.
Why do you think this problem exists, Amma, in terms of the African labor force not having really enough employment opportunities for the African people?
Yeah, it's just a structure of the economy, really. It's just the way, we have a lot of importation-based businesses. So that means jobs outside of Africa.
That they can't do.
That they can't do. I mean, if it's imported, you're just shipping. Shipping, logistics, production, it's all coming from outside, right?
True,
and that we are consuming here. Meanwhile, we're not really producing here. So it's really about the shift of that balance. So I believe that we do need to be competitive in what we can do. We probably can't compete with China on manufacturing ever. That's fine. But for what we can do, our creativity, our music, our culture, our heritage, the tourism, the landscapes, our film industries, for example. We've been lobbying for a long time, for example, for tax credits and incentives to invite people to come into Ghana, for example, to shoot in Ghana. It's a whole campaign from the National Film Authority to really get Ghana more competitive in terms of, Jamaica and South Africa as our closest competitors for film, right? You would go to SA because they have incentives.
True.
Even though it's much further away. Jamaica is also the other side of the pond. So how does Ghana become more competitive to really get people to come and shoot in Ghana? It's a policy conversation. It's a long-term conversation. I hear it's coming to a head now. So we're hoping to get a bit of an incentive package for people to come and shoot in Ghana, for example. These are all some of the things that would help us to produce more locally. But it's just the way the system is set up. It's just very import heavy. So we need to change that dynamic.
I guess it's a whole ball game. I mean, and it's looking at it from an industry to industry perspective, industrialization really, like from like manufacturing to factories to film and media. I mean, I think Idris Elba's been here a few times, isn't he? And he wants to kind of like
here just last week he was here.
I heard. And essentially, I think he wants to kind of like follow maybe Tyler Perry's footsteps and maybe launch like a studio. It's interesting, right? I mean, I don't know where that's going to be because Accra's crowded as it is.
It will be just outside of Accra.
I'm sure.
In the Volta region somewhere, I'm sure.
But we hope that it will create jobs for the local people, not just, again, exporting, talent from the West, you understand? Which is probably something that we need to kind of like stop doing and trying to get the younger people or the people from Ghana or Africa involved, which is something that, something that really, really is close to my heart because I feel like maybe I might walk into maybe a restaurant or something and you do see maybe Ghanaians or whatever doing the job, but maybe that the service is not very good. So maybe I'm more inclined to going to a restaurant or somewhere run by a Lebanese or whatever because I know the service is going to be way better. But that's something that we need to work on in terms of like the skills that our own people have, and we need to improve that. Okay, I mean, I'm really enjoying this conversation. Now, you mentioned something about 120 million pounds or dollars of funds for African women in regards to the labor force. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of programs that are designed in Washington and London and Brussels and other places, and they're not always very fit for what we require, and they're not very ambitious, in my opinion. So the whole point is that we need to see a lot more programs that are at the level of the problem. Right. So when we're doing piecemeal projects and, they're not quite solving the problem, I feel like we're just sort of...
It's like a temporary fix.
It's a temporary... It's not even a fix though, isn't it? It's like we're all doing activities, we're doing something, but the impact is not necessarily there. We see that from our figures, with all the programs we do for entrepreneurs, how many of them are actually getting to this level where they're medium-sized, they're attracting capital. If you look at the statistics, it's actually very, very low.
And that's kind of where you guys come in, like trying to get them out of that startup phase more to kind of the small to medium, more kind of medium and you've kind of established.
And it's not a quantity conversation. It's not the number of entrepreneurs that you're training or supporting, which everyone is obsessed with. It's really about the quality. The ones that have the high potential to really have that high job creation potential, they're the ones we really need to take time to support and give them all the resources required to help them along their way,
Yeah. Really, really interesting stuff that you're talking about now. What are the top skill sets that you feel like entrepreneurs on the continent or even Ghana need? Like, what's the kind of like the most common ones you run into that they really need?
Gosh, I think confidence is huge.
Really?
Just confidence. I mean, when we were growing up, we all had a Saturday job or, you worked at Pizza Hut. Like I worked for Pizza Hut for years, Okay. So we all get that level of real exposure and experience in the working environment. It helps with your conversations, the way you respond, the way you behave, the way you carry yourself. I think that's really missing for a lot of young people because they don't get the opportunity to get the real world work experience, right? Talking to a boss, talking to a customer, talking to a supplier, learning how business works at a young age. All of these things I think are have an impact on the way that we carry ourselves through the world of business or work. So I think confidence is a huge, it's not even a soft skill, it's a core skill. And it translates to things like communication, how you write, how you speak, how you eye contact. But it's also the way we're raised, so there's a lot of there are a lot of hurdles to jump before getting to the workplace. So I think that the soft skills, the speaking, the communication, the confidence, those are the key things that would carry you and transfer to other areas of your skill set.
Yeah, it's very interesting you mentioned that. I mean, because we heavily push, especially if Africans, heavily push education, overemphasis on education, but there's not enough emphasis on in terms of like developing the skills or getting real life experience, internships or internships and all these kind of stuff. Like we're not really doing it enough. We need to be doing more of this. Hopefully this can change soon. Okay, cool. Really enjoying this conversation. Let's kind of move on to the next bit. So I kind of want to talk about, what your role is in terms of impact investing in Ghana. So I think you joined the board recently. Was that correct? Yes. So tell us about, what they do and your role there and how you're trying to make impact.
Yeah, so impact investing Ghana is really about the ecosystem, like what's missing in the ecosystem within the context of making impact. So sustainable development, everyone talks about SDGs all the time. It's job creation, it's the environment, it's communities, it's industrialization, it's innovation, all of the touch points. We've all sort of come to recognize all the signs, SDG and the numbers and what they mean. So Scale Up Africa is really about Impact Investing Ghana is all about, again, mobilizing finance that would enable us to fix some of those problems. So we look at entrepreneurs themselves on the demand side. They demand capital. You have the intermediaries between them, the advisors and consultants and the hubs that support them. And they have the supply side, which is the investors themselves. So how do we engage all of those parties, the three parties, to kind of come together to plug the gap for funding?
So it's connecting the dots, really, is it?
It's really connecting the dots. So, for example, we have a wholesale fund that we just launched this year. And it means that we're really looking to support more fund managers to then deploy capital to ventures that are ready. So that's a wholesale high-level conversation. It's $75 million. We're trying to raise that fund so we can support more fund managers to go on to invest, especially emerging fund managers. There are very few female fund managers. So we're trying to plug those gaps and make sure that we're doing all the right things. And we have various collaboratives as well. So we have an entrepreneurship support organization collaborative. It's called the ESO collaborative. It's a bit of a mouthful. But it's, again, bringing all the public and private sector hubs and accelerators and government agencies that are working on entrepreneurship and job creation to come together as one sort of informal body. So we now have that, that convening power. We've been going for 5 years now.
Wow.
And so it means that we're now sort of talking to NEIP, that's the National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program, Ghana Enterprise Agency. Those are the two public sector agencies. And they're working with the hub networks and all the others that work towards entrepreneurship support in the country. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Brilliant.
And we're part of a global conversation around impact investing, which is super important. We're part of a global network called the GSG, which is a global steering group on impact investing, headed in the UK, and we're part of that. That's
Brilliant. Well, sounds quite busy, and
it's a lot.
There's a lot of three letter acronyms out there. It's just,
I know.
So too many.
I know. I feel like an English teacher.
WEF, GIC, and stuff. It's too many. Too many. So these funds, Amma, like, where are they coming from? Are they coming from the continent, or are they coming from foreign wealth?
It will be a mix. I mean, we're looking at pension funds, and a lot of this is long-term advocacy and policy changes, right? If you're looking at local pension funds, for example, how do we unlock local pension funds to take a little bit of that income to go into impact-related projects, right? As opposed to just buying T-bills. And we've seen what's happened with T-bills in this country. I mean, we've had major issues with the financial system, and people have lost out on some of those investments.
What T-bills?
Treasury bills.
Treasury bills, okay.
So that's the traditional way of doing it. But how do we then shift some of that income to impact investments? So it's our job to really have those conversations, but sometimes difficult conversations. You're trying to change people's minds and expose them to the fact that there is a huge opportunity. If we can get impact right, it means that we can create outsized opportunities for more people and get a good return from those kinds of investments. And then we also have the DFIs, the foundations, the development finance institutions also coming into some of these conversations as well.
Brilliant. Again, more three-letter acronyms.
More acronyms.
Yeah, brain fried. It's brilliant. So in terms of like the funds, so is this sort of funds that are distributed to like these entrepreneurs, these startups, these enterprises? Is it more like venture capitalist perspective, or like angel investing perspective, or is it just like is it just seed money?
It's getting very complicated now. But we're talking about wholesale funds. So that means we're talking about fund managers. We're not talking directly about so fund managers are those who manage venture funds, basically. So that we're looking at funding more of those funding bodies to then go on to support the entrepreneurs within their own portfolios.
How many of them tend to see that zero return, or see these startups or companies make an exit and get their money back?
Exits are notoriously low in Africa, full stop. I think it's something like it's less than 10%, which is very low. So again, that's something we need to figure out. Like, how do we actually get more exits? How do we incentivize more exits? How do we structure more exits? It's a problem,
What really incentivizes some of these investors to invest in these African businesses which have a low chance of doing an exit, and for them to kind of get their money back?
It's really hard. It's really hard to actually answer that question.
Mm.
I probably don't have the answers to that one.
That's okay.
Mm.
That's okay. But I guess we can probably just assume that they probably believe that Africa, something is happening on the continent, and they believe some of these businesses coming up, they can really, if they hit a spot, that can really, give them a big payoff, a big payday in the future.
I think now, honestly, everyone wants to see revenue.
Yeah.
It's not like 5 years ago where you could take a chance and be really patient.
Okay,
now
cool.
people want to see, like, you're solving a real problem. People are willing to pay for it on a regular basis, and there's money coming in. So that is also a very good indicator to potentially growing a marketplace for that particular solution.
Because you could just have a really good pitch that can really pitch well, and then sell yourself to an investor, and then the money just goes. And the run rate is just nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay. And then tell us about there's another organization that you're involved in as well. And that is the one called, where are we going? Where are we? Yeah. Reach for Change. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So Reach for Change is a Swedish organization, but it's global. It's all about supporting young people through social enterprise.
Yeah.
So, there's so many entrepreneurs that Reach for Change supports, and we have several offices across the country, across the continent, across the globe, actually. And it's really about building the concept of social enterprise and helping social entrepreneurs to do what they have to do. So from anything to paying their salaries, to just give them a bit of space to focus on solving the particular problem, to, training and support and sort of hands-on advice. That's what Reach for Change does.
Brilliant. What are some of the biggest problems that you feel that entrepreneurs should be solving on the continent?
Basics. I think COVID taught us basics. Food, shelter, accommodation, health, financial services.
Yeah. Financial services. I mean, do you think that's not kind of solved with Momo?
It's getting there. But things like even insurance, like a lot of people are very exposed to risk. And I'm sure there's a lot more space for insurance solutions to come in, especially at the micro level, where you're paying maybe just $1 a week or something towards some cover, right? Like if you're a farmer and it rains too much, you've lost your...
Of course.
If it doesn't rain enough, you've lost it.
Yeah.
If, it's like that. There's so many risks, right? Like so many people need to be covered. So I feel there's still a lot of space for basic services to be provided.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, shout out to Sam Babu from Fleury. I think he's trying to solve the health insurance problem, which is good. And you mentioned COVID. Let's go there. I mean, I believe you were in a BBC interview a few years ago talking about COVID and the impact on Africa or Ghana. How have you seen kind of like COVID impact the continent and the country, and how have enterprises and entrepreneurs responded to COVID, or pivoted, or kind of brought themselves out of the pandemic?
I think we definitely see a shift to digital. A lot more people are very familiar with digital solutions, tools. So that's been great to see more people embracing digital. It makes them a lot more efficient and open to other solutions and services, right? So I think that's been good. I still feel we've missed the boat in terms of production locally, but it's very difficult to produce locally. I mean, the cost of production is very high. So I can see why that's still been a problem, but I still feel there's potential to add value to what we have locally and maybe replace some of the things that we import currently.
Yeah.
So I think that's still an opportunity that people can still look at and take advantage of. Yeah, if they get it right.
Definitely. Yeah. I think I'm excited to see a lot more local businesses pop up, because I feel like we don't have enough of them, and we kind of import so much. We do import so much. I mean, how are you importing tinned tomatoes?
I know.
When we got tomatoes in particular. So I don't get that. Yeah. So I think hopefully we do get to see a lot more of that.
We've done quite a bit of training actually of women in agribusiness to help them, to show them what technologies are available to dry their fruits, right? Or preserve their fruits or can them. You produce something, just can it. There's so many technologies now that are quite accessible. Yeah. And we have some interesting institute, where we have a food research institute that nobody ever uses apart from people coming in from abroad. But fantastic resource. If you want to produce something, there's so many technologies and there's so much local knowledge that you could tap into by just visiting a local office. People don't really know about these things. So there's a lot of potential, but it's just really about, again, sometimes information is not really readily available. So it's really, again, about connecting those dots and figuring out what's available.
And people being aware of it, maybe the government making people more aware of these resources. Yeah,
that could be a simple win. No hanging fruit.
Yeah, something that we do need to solve. Agriculture essentially is one of the biggest, industries that we have in Africa. Do you, in terms of you kind of being kind of championing women more women in like in entrepreneurship. Do you feel like that's an area that needs to be, you know, a lot more occupied by women? Or do you think
I think it is
underoccupied? Do you think?
I think there are a lot of women in the early stage of production, right? It's agriculture is a value chain, so from production to export or trade, it's a whole chain, right? So typically women are producing, but they're not getting the most out of that chain.
Why aren't they getting the most out of the chain?
Yeah, because it just gets more complex as you go along. You need machinery, you need to add value. It means more capital, and we don't have capital. So then it's like I could talk about this all day, but you get the drift. It's just like a bit of a cycle. So we do need more equipment, more training, more support for women in agriculture to get them closer to the top of the chain, so they can earn more money and carry the society and economy as they do anyway.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because of course, I had a chat with Anthony from Shaq Express, and he was talking about getting more women involved in being riders, and he feels like he's kind of made a change of that, because I think now most of his drivers are women because of the impact that it's actually making on his business and customer service, the way they treat people, all that kind of stuff. And the other industries, you feel like there needs to be more women involved, especially in Africa or Ghana.
Well, half the population, so it makes sense. It's not even like a massive gender thing, but there are a lot of preconceptions and things that hold women back from approaching some of these opportunities. You know, so it's not like, we're half the population, so it's like, why not?
True. Makes a lot of sense.
You know, if you can perform and deliver the service and you're trained to do it.
Yeah.
It's just really just statistically, it just makes sense for women to be involved in contributing towards the economy because they can.
Yeah.
You know?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I really enjoyed this conversation, Amma. What would you say in terms of Africa in the coming years? I think we're really like reaching like a tipping point where technology is really improved, infrastructure is improved. We've got the diaspora relocating. It's a lot of exciting things happening on the continent. What in terms from a social enterprise, social investing perspective? Because I know that's kind of like where kind of you kind of lie in that kind of ecosystem. Where do you see Africa like in the coming next 5 years? Or what do you see that looking like? What kind of changes do you see kind of happening in that area, if you will?
Yeah, I think there's more conversations around the crisis that we're facing in terms of the youth crisis. Like we have a massive demographic opportunity. Like we're young, we're big. There's a lot of us, you know. So how do we actually use that to our advantage? Because it's one of the biggest advantages we're ever going to have.
Yeah, youngest continent,
aging population everywhere in the global north.
Yeah.
So how, just generally, even Asia, South America, how do we leverage that opportunity to serve and provide value to the majority of the world, and you know, build wealth from that opportunity?
Yeah.
So I feel like there should be. I'm not sure if it will happen. But there definitely should be more conversations and action around sustainable development of African countries, and really specifically looking at the youth development opportunity.
Yeah, I think the UN kind of spearheads that quite a lot in terms of like sustainable development goals. Yeah, it's quite interesting that. Brilliant. I've enjoyed this. So what would you say are your plans for 2024?
2024, just really ramping up on what we've done already. We have a film coming out. It's like a short film. We had a diaspora youth in film mentorship program last year, 2 years ago actually, and we just finished a pilot short film. It's called Diasporize.
Diasporize.
We supported 20 young people who had come out of film school. A few years ago, to just really connect them to mentorship opportunities. And we're lucky enough to have a couple of people like Nana Mensah from The Diplomat on Netflix, Amma Gyampo,
sounds familiar.
Afriya as well, who's a costume designer. She was a costume designer on The Woman King with Viola Davis. So they were all sort of mentors who had been through, obviously very experienced. They were able to share a lot with these young kids as to how they can make it in the film business. So the combination of that has been the production of this Diasporize pilot episode, which is coming out in March 2024. So we're looking to launch that and really see how we can get more of the kids involved in subsequent productions. Funding, permitting. So it's been good for us to sort of work with them to develop a specific production. So we're hoping that goes well. So we're launching that, and so we'll do more in the creative industry. sector, and more in the ag sector as well, just getting more people exposed to skills opportunities, access to productive assets like drying machines, and getting more people involved in our philanthropy network as well. So people can join us and learn what we do, connect with what we do, visit Ghana, connect with some of our projects, and really just build some more relationships within the philanthropic sector as well directly. So they can know what to expect from Scale Up Africa and the networks that we have to really build on the sustainable development goals.
Busy 2024, Amma.
I should think so.
It's quite interesting because I think I was at the Black Star International Film Festival
This year.
screen.
Oh yeah.
Not the festival, not the conference itself, but they had like a little screening one night at the old skate park. The former Virgil Abloh kind of Freedom Park, and they did like a thing called Shorts and Shorts, and I was speaking to the director over there, and just talking about the conference that's happening in September. So, and then she mentioned there's gonna be like mentorships, training, and workshops and stuff. And when I watched the short films, I was just blown away with the quality of
the production, right?
Yeah, the
amazing
quality
talent.
of the scripts, the talent, the actors, just amazing. I was like,
a lot of talent.
I was like, if it was like a dedicated platform like Netflix where I could just pay to stream short films, I would honestly pay for it because the quality was just fantastic. So that's one feedback I gave to the director, and she was shocked. I was like, I'll pay for this. You know? I mean, coming from me, I'll pay for it. Yeah, I'm just tired of the same old stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I think
there's so many diverse stories that we could recognize ourselves in.
Yeah.
Just woefully underfunded and undersupported. So we try to do our best to just really hold the hands of this next generation of film producers and filmmakers to kind of just give them the opportunity to do something tangible and then take it to the marketplace. So we're really proud of that cohort, and we hope to do more.
Thank you for what you're doing, because there's a lot of underrated, overlooked creative talent in the continent and in Ghana per se, whether it's film, acting, whether it's music, whatever, design, so underrated, so overlooked, and we need people like yourself to really kind of help to connect the dots and leverage that. So thank you for the contributions to make it to the continent.
Pleasure.
Cool.
Enjoy it.
I will do. Finally, where can everyone connect to Scale Up Africa? If there's any announcements, and I believe you've shared some of the kind of the services that you guys provide. There's kind of anything else that you haven't touched upon that we can kind of talk about that as we wrap up?
Not really. I mean, we have our website. We are ScaleUpAfrica.com, and then LinkedIn is probably home for us. So check out my LinkedIn personally, Amma Gyampo on LinkedIn. Amma is with 2 M's. Very specific about that. Ashanti. And LinkedIn at Scale Up Africa as well.
Okay, brilliant. I mean, we'll have all of that in the show notes for everyone. So you guys can head over to thesoundofaccra.com/Amma G for the show notes, and we'll have all the links to my LinkedIn website and today's discussion, the key points and highlights and the wisdom keys. And then social media, LinkedIn. We'll leave all that links on YouTube, on the podcast platforms where you guys can click and check it all out. Amma, really thank you for coming on the show and shedding some light in terms of what's happening on the continent, on the socio-economic entrepreneurship kind of level. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Adrian. Pleasure to be here. Thanks a lot.
All right, we'll see you guys in the next one.